As I work with people in my HR journey over 30 odd years, both in corporates and then in my, consulting career over the last 10, 11 years, I think one of the things you start realizing as an individual that there's a wide variety of people. And slowly I started moving in my own sort of journey from individuals to organization to communities. So one of the things very, very few people know about me is that I work with agri startup in Orissa actually, which is where I belong to, and basically working with tribal people and underdeveloped communities to bring their products to the market. And over the last few years, as I worked with underdeveloped communities and tribals, I realized that we are all so privileged. Those of us who are educated, living in a world which almost gives us everything, if you will. Our whole sort of world is the world of the have-beens, and there is a world out there which is the world of those who don't have everything, and they are actually in a way moving from a have-beens to having even lesser and lesser, and the gap of haves and have-beens is widening. If you can put up my slide set, please. I don't know who's working that, but if you can put up the slide set, then I can go through the slides. Yeah. So I think my interest in this subject of inequality in general has been around for quite a few years, but perhaps I've done a little more deep dive over the last 3 or 4 years around what are the different aspects of inequality. Okay. And one of the aspects which I'm going to talk about today is around technology. Can we move to the next slide? Many of you are sitting in a place, both from a geographical perspective as well as from a, institution perspective, income perspective, where you have a lot of access to technology. But think about a person, who's sort of maybe just about 100 kilometers away from you, living in a very small village of 10 houses or 12 houses. This person in many cases has just got electricity. Forget about technology, right? So both in terms of, the dividends, if you look at, what's on the slide there, this person is losing out, okay? The person doesn't even know how to operate a mobile phone, for example, while we do read how mobile phones have taken on, broadband has taken on, and so on and so forth. But I think the fundamental you need to maybe just keep in mind from an inequality perspective is that while technology is bringing in a lot of dividends, and the reality is that it is helping a large number of people, there is still a very, very large number of people who, for reasons we will come to in a minute, actually are not getting the benefits of these dividends. Okay, and while in many cases, the benefits are accruing, you must also keep in mind that it is not accruing to everybody. Okay, and that is what we need to focus on in a way, because if you need to raise the overall community, you need to raise mankind and humankind in general, then you need to take everybody along, right? So for example, if I take an analogy and say that, in a college, just having 2 or 5 good students is not good enough. The reputation of a college will depend on when the batch of 200, everybody is at least at a minimum standard. So how do you bring people to a minimum standard in any community? And we have the whole world to sort of look to from a technology perspective, right? Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So clearly, from a progress perspective, you will see that the fourth industrial generation, the acceleration has been huge, right? So for mankind in general, if you look at the left side and see that the per capita income, this is a slightly dated chart about a year back, but basically what it shows is that, technology is actually helping overall income go up dramatically. Having said that, what this chart actually doesn't tell you is that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is increasing dramatically. So if you look at the US, or even if you look at India, we read in the papers about, so many billionaires getting created, so many unicorns and so on and so forth. But the reality is that a large chunk of that income is getting, into the hands of very few. In fact, you can pretty much count where that income is, sort of coming from and where it is going, right? So if you look at the concentration of income, and this is where the problem is, that technology, in fact, on one side, while it is, bringing in more inclusion and it is helping in terms of, broad basing, access and opportunity, it is concentrating income in the hands of very, very few. Okay. And that is where the challenge is. And you would also have read that, India is not really a greatly philanthropic, country. So a lot of people who have the income at the top are not necessarily willing and able to share that income necessarily to the so-called underprivileged in that sense, and that is where the problem is. Could we move to the next slide, please? Now, one of the ways to look at technology is that it certainly provides potential for being liberated. Okay, and that is where the word is, potential. Okay, so if you look at what technology can provide, it provides the potential subject to, I think, 3 or 4 things, right? So one, it is subject to access, which is that do I have access to technology at all? Okay, so whether it is broadband or electricity or mobile phone or computers or whatever it is, robotics, if I go to a little more advanced stage, and robots and so on and so forth, or AI kind of a thing, but do I have access? Number one. Number two, do I actually know how to use the technology? And that is one of the big things, and I'll come back to that in a minute, around education, because you would have seen the data that 90% of engineers in our country are actually not really engineers. While they have a degree, but they are not educated enough to really be called engineers in that sense, and therefore unemployable. So there is a very direct connection between education, which can lead to the use of technology, to really reaping the dividends of technology, and that chain is actually broken. Particularly if you look at India, our whole primary education, secondary education, and advanced education doesn't allow very often for people to use technology, even though it may be available, right? So there is access, there is how do you use the technology, there is education, and then finally there is opportunity in your community. And again, while I think the government and others are trying to do a lot, I think certainly our policy framework and the bureaucracy comes in the way very often of people actually reaping the dividends of technology in its full form, kind of a thing, right? And I think if you go to many of the portals which communities run or governments run, and try and actually tell somebody, here is something for you, please go and use it, the reality is that most people will not be able to use it, and there are too many bottlenecks for people to actually sort of use and take the dividends of it. And I think the point I'm trying to make is very simple. Technology allows for potential and opportunity, but in order to make that really happen in the world, there are other things which are required. Access, education, skills, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Now, one of the aspects I wanted to talk about, and this is a very, in a way, a very critical aspect of communities, and how do you not only look at the individual, but look at the communities. And I've taken the analogy of teams, right? So what you'll see on this slide is very simple, right? That when you have diverse teams, productivity can go up. If productivity goes up, income goes up. If income goes up, everybody reaps the benefits of it. It's as simple as that, right? So whether you take a community of farmers, you take a community of tribal people in healthcare centers, you take a village community, you take any kind of a team, diversity does have benefits. Let me take a couple of very simple examples, right? In a couple of the underprivileged areas we are working in, communities, because of access issues, are very much saying, what do I have in my village? Okay, so one of the experiments we ran a few years back is, can we have connection between villages, right? So we put in both physical connections, which is runners between villages which were close by, and some kind of telephonic and computers in 5 or 6 villages, saying now, instead of looking at the community as one village, you take 6 villages together or 7 villages together, and suddenly you start discovering that my village doesn't have a blacksmith, but my neighboring village has. My village doesn't have a trained clinical, worker, but the next village have. My village doesn't have an expert in rice seeding, but 2 villages away are there. So, technology again is allowing that whole inclusion of people in different communities. And I'm taking a very small example of 6 villages, but basically it can happen across the world. And as you build communities, the opportunity again to build diverse teams goes up, or diverse communities goes up, which leads to productivity, and then that can lead to a broader this thing. There are of course other examples where for example, if you take something like Aadhaar or inclusion in banking, again which are creating communities at large. But I go back to my earlier point that while the communities are there, but please look at it that how many of these people who are connected into banking or into Aadhaar are actually able to reap the benefits without middlemen, who are actually almost becoming a bottleneck in using technology, if you will, because these people are not educated and skilled, or don't have the wherewithal to use a mobile phone or a computer or AI. So somebody in the middle is actually reaping the benefits rather than the last mile sort of person. And that is a dichotomy that in a way, while technology is trying to help the last mile person, in reality it is perhaps not helping the last mile person, but many other people in the middle of the chain. And that is something one hopes that as technology progresses, we will actually be able to cross that barrier, educate our people enough and skill them enough to be able to sort of reap the real benefits. Could we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So, this is a very busy slide, and, you can circulate it later and, basically, take a look at it. But I just want to make a couple of very, simple points, right? So it is very clear that, with the advent of AI and technology and robotics and so on and so forth, clearly, I think there are many processes which can get enhanced. People can benefit from, for example, big data and so on and so forth. But there are two things happening, right? So one, take a very simple example. In the urban areas, if there is let's say a gardener or a driver or somebody who's at the lower end of the work chain does not know how to use a mobile phone properly, chances are that he or she is actually going to lose their job. Okay, because the employer would say, my driver must know how to find navigation, through the mobile phone, or at least my, maid should have a mobile phone and know how to use it, so I can actually leverage her skills better and her capabilities better. It's a very simple example, but this is what is happening. So even employers and communities, what they're doing for people who are not skilled enough, who don't have enough access, and who may not, this thing, they are actually replacing them. So think about it like this, right? That there's a set of workers or workers in the community who are 40 to 50 years old. They don't have the skills. They are getting replaced by the younger generation who's a 20 or 25 or 30 years old. So you are basically almost excluding a community of people who are not digitally savvy, which is again creating a larger divide, both in terms of productivity as well as in terms of this thing. So I think the way again to think of it is, I'm trying to bring this issue to you in different aspects, saying, while technology has the potential, but in reality, the day-to-day behavior for many of us and everybody else, for example, take a very simple example, right? Let's say I order food from a particular restaurant, and the restaurant tells me tomorrow that, sir, I don't know how to use the mobile phone, and I don't have an internet connection, or I don't have a website where you can order from me. What would you do as a person? You would very simply say, let me switch to another restaurant. Now, while this cook may be a great cook, but just because he doesn't have access to technology or the potential or the skills to use technology, he or she is getting excluded from the whole economic boom which is there in front of us, right? Let's go. I have one more slide to share with you. While I've argued for all of this, can we? Yeah. So while I've argued for all of this, in a way, all of this, comes together on this slide, right? What do you do with communities and countries which have very little, in terms of technological capabilities? This is a very dated, I was trying to find a latest study, but I couldn't lay my hands on it. But it's very clear that there are a large number of people who still have access issues. We have issues of technology, skilling and so on and so forth, and they are losing out, right? So you can see the different ways in which people are losing out. I am very hopeful personally that communities and governments, NGOs, youth, who are working on the base ground, I see a lot of young people working on the ground, will hopefully over a period of time, reduce the biases, as we call it, the skill bias or the technology bias, as we call it. And they will then enable the people on the ground to be able to skill, educate, use technology to be able to, in a way, become part of the economic boom. Okay. Having said that, if we just move to the last slide, and I'm going to make just one point. While income is a very critical thing, I'd like you to, go back to, a lot of research getting done, or having been done earlier as well by a gentleman called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi around the concept of flow. Forget the slide for a minute, but basically what flow says is that beyond a particular income level, actually happiness doesn't increase. So while we are looking at income and technology as the two key, drivers, saying if, technology can drive income, somehow it will be linked to happiness. The reality is that beyond a point of time, happiness doesn't increase with income. And, you can go and take a look at his research and you'll realize that there is so much more to it. And basically what he says is that, if there is a coherence between your capabilities, which is what he calls the skill level, and the challenges in front of you on a day-to-day basis, you will be in a state of flow. And the state of flow is what makes you most happy at given point of time. So I'll leave you with that argument saying that one of the things technology must do and try to do, apart from sort of trying to increase the income of people, is to be able to help people at every strata of the community to do work which is at their challenge level. And AI should, and robotics should, and technology should in a way help people match their capabilities with their skill levels and challenges they have. And that actually in many ways will add to happiness of every individual in community apart from just income levels. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy that you've invited me, and I'm also very happy to take any comments or questions if you have.